It's Two on the Aisle with me, Charles Gross, and Leslie Hoban Blake. Tonight, reviews of Bat Out of Hell, Love Noel, Little Gem, Rinse Repeat. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Two on the Aisle. And hello again, Leslie.
Hello, Charlie.
How are you?
Well, it's the last day of the summer season, and we're heading into the Labor Day weekend.
Yes.
And I've survived, so I guess I'm okay.
Good for you. So here's a question I would like to ask you. On a hot summer night, would you offer your time and money to a musical based on the Meat Loaf album, Bat Out of Hell?
Would it tell me a good story?
No.
Oh, would it have great performances?
Yes, but pretty shallow characters.
Oh. Would it at least have good renditions of the Meat Loaf songs?
Yes.
Then I might.
Well, then you have your opportunity because Bat Out of Hell is playing at City Center. This is book, music, and lyrics by Jim Steinman, based primarily on the Meat Loaf album of the same name, under the direction of Jay Shalib, who uses all sorts of different levels on the stage and screens and projections. And my first thought, Bat Out of Hell, because I looked at the cast and all these very slim and, fit people, and it occurred to me, if Meat Loaf tried out for this show, he probably would not have been cast.
If you go to YouTube, you will see Meat Loaf minus 500 pounds, as he is today, taking a curtain call with the cast.
Yes, well, maybe they would let him in then.
I don't know playing what, though. There's no character.
Now, this is set in an Armageddon-type atmosphere, which I think Meat Loaf would appreciate. And the plot, well, let me put it to you this way. Suddenly, Moulin Rouge looks like a very intelligent show. Okay, so check your brain at the door. Here we go. Christina Bennington, she's Raven. She's the daughter of this wealthy industrialist.
Falco is his name.
Yes, Falco is his name. And she's in love with Strad, Andrew Pollack, who is this... He's kind of been subjected to this tuck everlasting effect that keeps him forever young.
Everybody outside is 18 years old.
Right, except for one character named appropriately Tink, when he was 14. Yeah. Which brings us to the second question of the evening. If Bradley Dean, as the industrialist, is such a brilliant industrialist, how come he's not trying to bottle this stuff and sell it?
Interesting, yes. Yeah. Well, because nobody wants to set foot into that area.
Well, he does. He wants to rebuild it, but Strad and his lost boys, because this is supposed to be also loosely based on Peter Pan,
and also loosely based on Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah,
because Falco's daughter falls for Strat.
Right, and vice versa.
This thing has been 40 years in the making. It's been in the making since because Jim Steinman didn't like the idea that Meat Loaf got all the credit, and it was Jim Steinman's music. He just performed it. Everybody thought that it was Meat Loaf's music, but it wasn't.
Right.
So it's just interesting to me that after all these years, he can't come up with anything better than stealing plot lines from, other shows, and not as well. Yeah,
it's true. It's really a very crazy plot. I mean, the stars are supposed to be Christina Bennington as the young lady and Andrew Pollack as Peter Pan, but I think the show was stolen by Bradley Dean and Lena Hall as her parents.
Lena Hall could steal a manhole cover out of the street and nobody would say anything because she is so brilliant. I mean, it's like stealing a diamond out of Tiffany's window. Okay. Would that be better? You'd like that one better?
Or perhaps stealing, not quite, but close to stealing Hedwig from...
Yes, which she did also.
Yes.
Right. Shorthand, yes, from Hedwig and the Angry Inch. Yes. John Cameron Mitchell.
Right.
Or
Neil Patrick Harris. Yes. Right. Okay, but getting back to this, I mean, talk about two dysfunctional parents, and talk about
like Peg and Al Bundy. They really are.
Peg and Al Bundy.
Oh, by comparison.
Are June and Ward Cleaver compared to these two.
There you go. Okay.
I mean, and what passes for humor in this show? Well, at one point, Raven
as far as
takes a car motor from a car that I think was supposed to be part of a flashback, so how she got a hold of it, I don't know. She takes the motor, throws it in the orchestra pit, and by the way, kudos to the show for having an orchestra pit with an orchestra in it. She throws the car down and a couple of broken instruments, and Jeers from the band, you know, get...
musicians walk by with broken instruments.
Yeah, that's humor. But clever, they actually get there sort of, because Strad keeps asking people, on a hot summer's night, would you offer your throat to the wolf with the red roses, which of course is a prelude to one of the songs. Right. And that is actually a running gag, and I think it works out very well.
Because nobody really gets it. They don't get it on stage, and I don't think most of the audience gets it. You got it.
I got it, sure.
Yeah, but I don't think,
I have to assume that anyone who's there is there for the music.
Well, that's the other part of it. I mean, who is the audience for Meatloaf? People of my generation, people of your generation. Does Miriam know anything about Meatloaf?
Probably not.
Probably not. So, you know, I think that's... Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So, and that's really where we are. Again, you've got some very able performances. You've got, you know, do you like the music?
Love the music.
Okay.
I thought all of this was played just a beat too slow. For considering what the albums were, you know, I mean, I listened to a couple of songs afterwards, and I thought they were all played faster. But that could just be my whatever, you know. Or
it could be how they felt that night, or perhaps they felt the atmosphere. Right. But the bottom line is...
And Danielle Steers was wonderful as this character, Zahira, who's a go-between between the two worlds. Right,
and you have Aviance Holes as the character of Tenku. Should I tell? Yes, I think I will. He dies.
Well, I'm glad you waited for my answer.
Wait a minute. No one gets the opportunity to clap their hands?
Okay, I know.
Well, maybe no one wants to clap their hands for this show. I don't know. So, in conclusion, on a hot summer night, would you go to see the musical based on Meatloaf's album, Bat Out of Hell? And my answer really does have to be no.
Okay, my answer would be, between Bat Out of Hell and Moulin Rouge, every time I open my bag in public, glitter and stuff falls out of it. Stop throwing glitter from the stage. At any show from now on, I cannot stand it. I don't want to see any more glitter coming out. But anyway, that being said, I could have lived without this show very, very nicely. It was a couple of hours out of my life that I really could have used.
So I would say 2.5 playbills out of 5.
That's about it. I imagine that, and that father was very strange. I know he was supposed to be, he was tangentially supposed to have something to do with Trump, but it was so, it went by so fast. No, the building had Falco written on top, like Trump would have the building, but then they left it. Then they didn't follow that up at all. So,
no, if there's any connection,
a Trump there, I'll find it.
Yes, she will. But we really do have to move on.
Then let's move on. We're moving on.
And here now we are going to have a lesson in modern theater. In the good old days, it used to be that you go to the theater. It was 8 o'clock every night. Well, some nights it's 8 o'clock. Some nights it's 7 o'clock. Some nights it's 7:30. And you have to know which it is or you're going to be in trouble. And, well, I've been pretty good about that, but...
But as a theater critic, it's really your job to know when it is. So I'm not going to give you any points for not knowing.
I'm not expecting any.
No, I did the same thing with...
But learn, I am saying learn from my mistakes. Yes.
I did the same thing with... never mind, I can't think of the name of the show. Love, Noel. Love, Noel is a musicalized version of the book by Barry Day of the letters and music, the letters and songs of Noel Coward. Now, if we think that Bat Out of a Hell and Meatloaf are out of the ken of contemporary audiences, imagine Noel Coward, who's only been dead since 1973. So, you know, only. But Noel Coward, at least, has a resonance. You say Noel Coward, and people go, "Oh, Noel Coward." And if you look at any of the stuff that Noel Coward did on YouTube, it was magnificently funny. And the people that he wrote letters to were everybody from the Queen Mother to Elaine Stritch, you know, and his very favorite lady, Gertrude Lawrence, in the middle. And they're being played by two of my former favorite cabaret favorites. Well, because they go back to the 90s when I was a cabaret critic. So Steve Ross, who used to be Mr. Cabaret, and K.T. Sullivan, who is a lovely woman with a gorgeous voice, but they've been doing this for how long is the 90s? 25 years ago?
30, actually.
30 years ago? Okay. 30. So everybody's a little long in the tooth, is what I'm trying to say. And even Charlotte Moore, who has had such wonderful hits, with On a Clear Day and Finian's Rainbow. This didn't quite make it. The set by James Morgan was lacking. It just, the show should have popped. In 2014, I read a review from 2014 when John Glover and Judy Kuhn did it, and they raved. And I can imagine John Glover and Judy Kuhn doing this. But there was
also a version, I don't know, I think it may have been this same one with Twiggy in it, as Gertrude Lawrence.
Really?
Yeah.
Of the same show?
Well, maybe it was a different, but it covered a lot of the same ground. Certainly, it was based on
it was a two-character show.
This was a two-character show based on the relationship between Noel Coward and Gertrude Lawrence.
No, that's not what this is.
Oh, okay.
This is the letters of Noel Coward to everybody.
Right. Okay.
And then his music brought in. And the problem is the way that Barry Day, who wrote this, he tied the letters that he knows very well to be introductions
to the
from
songs.
or key things to bring you to them. And therefore, it just gets tired very quickly. I don't care who the letter is to. If they're going to pick the letter up off the top of the piano, and you can see large letters because people are not wearing glasses,
Right.
and then they're reading them, there's something lacking in the stagecraft of that. So while I love the performers and I love the music
Material,
and I love
sure.
Noel Coward, it didn't all gel for me.
I have to point out that, since his death, Noel Coward, there have been several reviews based on with Coward's songs. This one, the one I mentioned, his plays tend to be revived on a regular basis, so we've seen them.
Some better, some worse.
Some better, some worse. I think there have been like at least 3 versions
Private Lives.
Of Private Lives.
That's the one that always gets done.
Yes, Blythe Spirit's been a couple of times, most recently with Angela Lansbury.
But in any case, what I really was trying to say is, even though you missed it, you didn't necessarily miss anything. And I was so sorry. Once Steve sits down to play the piano and sing, and he's not really a singer, but he's always gotten along with a cabaret kind of voice, it picks up speed. He doesn't have a real British accent. She has to handle everybody else. They're all the women to whom he's written. And they all have to sound different, and they don't. Or they don't have to sound different, but she tries to make them. In other words, I don't want to beat this thing with a whip. It should have been a great idea. It was a great idea.
It was a great idea. It just was not executed.
It didn't come out the way it should have, and I would give it a 2.5 for effort.
And I have to say, knowing how you feel about Noel Coward and his work, this must have been a pretty.
Yeah, it really.
So apparently, I did make a mistake, but I found the right show to make the mistake with. Here's a show also playing at the Irish Rep. This show, I did get there on time. I actually got there early, and I am so glad I did. This is Little Gem by Ellen Murphy, directed by Mark Atkinson Burrell. It is, we've been seeing a lot of solo performances lately. So this is kind of 3 solo performances for the price of 1. It's 3 women, 1 young, 1 in the middle, and 1 older.
Well, they're a mother, a daughter.
Well, we find that out later.
Yes.
Originally, we think they have separate stories, who each, in the form of a monologue, tell this story. And ultimately, we realize that they are connected, but throughout the evening, they interact once, very briefly, and almost accidentally. But it's basically one gets up and starts telling the story from her angle. The other gets up and tells it from her angle. Then the third gets up. And it just, to me, worked so beautifully. Marcia Mason was 3 separate stories that initially
here and there.
But as the play progresses,
it becomes one story.
It becomes one story, right? Marcia Mason, especially as the grandmother, such a wonderful stage-dominating performance. I also like Brenda Meany as the mother, and Lauren O'Leary as the daughter, whose unplanned single pregnancy is what ultimately ties everything together.
And also, I believe, I looked at their credits. I think Brenda Meany is American, and I think Lauren O'Leary is maybe Australian, given her credits, or Welsh or something. And of course, we know that Marcia Mason is American. Now, whoever did the dialect work on this show did a brilliant job. It's all Northern England, Northern Ireland rather, and that's a very specific accent.
Right.
And just lovely work. And I ran into Marcia outside, and I have to tell you that she looks so much younger than the character that she played. It's wonderful to see her really in person as well.
Yes.
But very nice writing, very interesting. It was written by a guy. even though the monologue, no, it was written by a woman, I'm sorry, it was directed by a guy, Elaine Murphy wrote it. Mark, I'll get his
Atkinson
Burrell
directed it,
and the only thing that bothered me was that room. I had no idea where they were. It was supposed to be maybe a medical office,
no,
maybe a health office.
It was a medical or health office.
Yeah, but it couldn't be both. It had to be one or the other.
Well, a medical office can be a health office, I would think.
No, if you go to if you go to get health care, if you go to a doctor's office, you get a doctor's care. Okay. If you go to a health agency, which is what they were talking about, they had to go and get special procedures and whatnot. You couldn't just get that at the doctor's office. It had to be a health agency, and they couldn't be the same place.
Okay. Well, there actually is a reason. I was questioning that also because most of the play takes place outside, and I thought initially, all right, these are going to be three women who have three stories related to a medical office. And the reason is because this play is based on stories that Elaine Murphy heard when she worked in a doctor's office.
Well, but that doesn't mean that has to be the set. It could have been set outside under a tree just as easily.
I didn't say it was the right decision. I said that is most likely the basis for the decision. And, you know, and if that is the only thing that we have to complain about with this play.
No, well, I have one other small complaint, and that is I didn't know in the beginning to whom the actors were talking. And I remember when we saw Seawall and A Life, it was very clear that they were talking to us, the audience. They took us in, they made little, what seemed like ad-lib jokes. We knew that that's who they were talking to. But here, they were talking to us, and they never let us know that. I mean, ultimately, we sort of broke the wall down and listened to them.
Right.
But I need, as a director myself, I need to know to whom the person I'm listening to is talking.
Right. You know, it's a valid point, but as a member of the audience, I didn't care. And I kind of did think they were talking to me, even if they kind of were holding, you know, so they're talking to me or they're talking to it. To me, it didn't matter. I was getting the story, and I was just enjoying both the story and the performances so much.
Well, the difference is they never did the thing that you do if you're talking to an audience, which is you talk here, and you talk here, and you talk here. Yeah. They talked always to the back wall, so I never knew who they were supposed to be talking to. That was my qualm.
Okay, but again, two minor problems in my opinion.
Two playbills for the same. You get one on one side, one on the other.
Well, I think it's going to be all together. It's going to have to be 6.5 playbills because I am absolutely giving this 4.
Oh my goodness, really? I would give it 3.5. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it.
Oh, I did love it. Interestingly, my daughter Miriam, who never likes anything, always has something to say.
She did. She liked it very much.
She really liked it. Yes.
She did. Well, she's working on a play with a monologue. We'll talk about that in a little while.
Yes, we will.
And then I saw yet another show that Charlie didn't see, not because he didn't get there on time, but because
he was unable to see
he just wasn't able to get a seat. So it's called Rinse Repeat. It's still running. Hopefully, it'll still be running by the time we broadcast. And it really interesting concept and subject matter that might have been done better. It's written by a young woman named Dominica Ferraud, or Ferraud, however she pronounces it, who is also the star. And she plays a young woman by the name of, I've just lost my place here. Okay, thank you. By a young woman by the name of Rachel, whose mother, Florencia Lozano, is a high-powered attorney and a very beautiful woman. Dominica is a small person, and she's coming back from what we think is a rehab place. We don't know quite what the reason is, but we get the gist that it's a rehab place. Her father is played by Michael Hayden, and I don't know if you remember Michael Hayden from Carousel at Lincoln Center.
Which
Michael
version?
The Audra McDonald version, okay? For want of a better way to say it. Michael Hayden was and now he's playing dads. But anyway, and Portia from the Labyrinth Theater Company, Florencia Lozano is also from there, plays a counselor. And what we learn, and we see it slowly unwind, they don't tell us right away. But what happens is when Rachel comes home, we find out that it wasn't drugs, it was food. That she was an anorectic, and she was at a clinic for anorexia. And so when she sits down to eat, everybody goes, "Oh, look, she's eating a whole meal. Oh, that's so wonderful." But the mother never eats. The mother takes a sip of water, and that's her meal. And slowly but surely you find out that that's what the rinse repeat means. It's the cycle of this particular illness that's going on over and over again in their family. And the parents are not good parents. They're helicopter parents at best. They're not there for their daughter. They're there to send her to rehab.
Well, if they're helicopter parents, then that means they're there all the time, isn't it?
I thought helicopter parents meant
helicopter parents means you're over hovering.
Oh,
you're
always
hovering
used the term
over
wrong then. But whatever kind of, they're absentee parents. Okay, whatever that phrase is. I thought that's what helicopter meant, but okay. They're absentee parents, and that's one of the reasons she found herself in that position. There's also a brother, played by another actor named Lozano, Jake Ryan Lozano, who's not related to Florencia. And it's a melodramedy, if there is such a thing. That's the problem. By the way, Dominica, I met her after the show, is a very young person, maybe 25, 27, something like that. And so this is quite a feat to have a play that she's written be produced at the Signature Theater with herself in the lead is quite a thing to do. But it's also, it's not the best play ever written. You know, it has an interesting theme. It's a theme that should be talked about more. Anorexia is a terrible disease, and the mother suffers from it as well. And, you know, it's not genetic. It's something that you pass down from behavioral thing. In any case, I would give it, with all of everything going on in the set and the costumes, et cetera, I would give it a 3.
Okay.
Which, you know, was an interesting idea, and I would like to see something else done on that subject.
Right. Well, interestingly, you know, we're going to be talking about my play coming up. Which,
is that why I'm holding this?
Which has a girl named Rachel in it, who was on her way to do her laundry. And this is called, this will be at the United Solo Festival. We'll be putting the information up on the screen. You should see it about now. And if you're watching this on YouTube, all you have to do is click on to see it. This is called How I Found an Affordable Apartment on the Upper West Side of Manhattan Without Really Trying. And this takes place in the 1990s, where, based on reality, but it's become kind of a fantasy. So I'm going to take you back to a time where the streets of New York were only meant for cars, but you still couldn't find a space. So hope you will come to see it. And if you really want to see what the theater that I'll be performing at looks like, you can go now, because there is yet another.
No, he's gone.
He's gone?
Okay. He ends tomorrow.
Oh, well, you can't see it.
We went to see Kevin McDonald in the same space that Charlie will be using.
Yes.
Which is a very nice 50-seat house at the Acorn Theaters.
No. Theater Row.
Theater Row. I call it the Acorn Theaters because it's one of the names of the theaters. Anyway, we had a good time. Kevin McDonald, of course, is one of the kids in the hall, which is kind of strange. It's 1/5 of the kids in the hall we saw. And he's an interesting performer.
Yes.
I can see why he wasn't necessarily a solo performer until after the kids in the hall. But I enjoyed his performance.
Yeah, it's autobiographical. He tells about. Well, no. I think you enhanced it. She.
I gave away a punchline.
Kevin needed a name. Leslie supplied it.
No, he didn't need it. He was telling a story about the West Bank Cafe, which I know very well. And as he built, I realized that I knew who the person he was talking about was, and before he said it, and it slipped out of my mouth.
Yes, and who was it?
The theater. Louis Black, who used to own the West Bank Cafe. He was one of the 3 owners of it.
Right.
Steve Olson
and so, like, for the next 10 minutes, Kevin just went with it, and poor Leslie was now the co-star of this one.
No, I was the victim. He said, "Okay, now you're my victim." But he was very sweet. He was very kind.
He was.
And it was fun. We had a good time, I think. We're not rating it. It wasn't. It's not theater.
No. We were just.
But he might be making it into. I mean, it was a solo piece in a theater.
Yes, it could be extended. Apparently,
it could be.
He moved away from Hollywood to be with this woman that he fell in love with
in Winnipeg.
So, yes.
If that's a true story, which I think it is.
It sounds like it is.
But he does a passive-aggressive thing about. I love Winnipeg. I really love Winnipeg.
Yes.
I do.
You know, who cares if the only work I can get is doing a quick show in a 50-seat theater?
Right.
You know, that's.
But anyway, so.
I think even I've never watched Kids in the Hall, but I still did enjoy the show. I guess I will have to.
Talking about the different people, and you wouldn't know who he was talking about.
No.
Scott Thompson was the most flamboyantly gay actor in history at that time. Well, short of Harvey Fierstein, of course.
Yes.
But I mean, they were on regular television, and he was doing. And they all dressed up as women. That's a very British. They all took their turns in British. Not that they were British, but they pegged themselves on British.
Canadian, I think.
They're Canadian, but they pegged themselves on British.
Well, you see it in American television. Milton Berle was very well known.
Yeah, but between Milton Berle and now, there aren't very many, except for
Flip Wilson?
Flip Wilson, thank you.
And even that's 50 years old.
Yeah, so I mean, it isn't done that often. To the same effect. Well, in Living Color, Jamie Foxx did it.
There you go. All right, so we just have a couple of more minutes. So I finally saw the Fosse-Verdon TV series, which I enjoyed. Obviously, very influenced by Fosse's All That Jazz movie in its tone and its direction. A lot of things I didn't know about Bob Fosse or Gwen Verdon. Although one thing I was curious about was the relationship between Gwen Verdon and Anne Reinking, which both Anne is featured, but she plays a relatively minor role, and the two of them. Gwen
Verdon simply decided that in order to keep Bob in her life, she had to accept Anne Reinking.
But also to keep his legacy.
That's a different story.
They've worked together.
Yes.
Well,
because she was no longer physically able to do some of the stuff, so she needed Anne Reinking to do some of that. Which is none of which is in the film.
No,
but those are realities of what was going on. I will say something though. I sent you, and we can put it up. We can super it on the screen. I hope. I sent you a picture of Jerome Robbins that I'd never seen before, that I thought was Bob Fosse.
Yes.
So I always thought that Bob Fosse was modeling himself on Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly.
He probably was.
This picture of Jerome Robbins is a pose that Bob Fosse struck all the time. And the way he was dressed is the way. So I would look at that picture again. And, go,
again, they're both dancers, they're both choreographers, and I obviously think it's safe to say they were both influenced by Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly.
The difference is that Kelly and Astaire were not known to be choreographers, and Bob Fosse was. So Bob Fosse was, I think, modeling himself on a choreographer. That's what I'm just saying.
You're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, or maybe Robbins was modeling himself on Fosse. And
no, they were not contemporaries.
And of course, Gene Kelly did choreograph or co-choreograph a lot of his.
Not a lot. He choreographed some. He would get credit for some. Anyway.
And we are out of time. That is our show for the evening. When you go to the theater, look for Leslie and me, us too.
On the aisle.